Warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and salam sejahtera to everyone present here today. First of all, thank you very much for to all the pupils from the schools I have invited um, for your time to join this session. Thank you very much to Puan Asimah for agreeing to do this with us. All right. So this is one of our program to help um, uh, pupils who are taking English literature for SPM this year. So I hope this session will help you to at least see how you are able to improve the way you answer your questions, your SPM questions. So I would also like to thank PPD Petaling Utama for this opportunity, because they will put this session in YouTube Live so that you can refer to the lesson later. All right. And if it is I would like you to switch on your camera, all right, along the lesson, because as your teacher is teaching, is giving whatever she is imparting to you, it is just good for you to be attentive and to make sure that you are attentive. If it is good if you switch on your camera, all right. And your attendance, I will share the attendance link later before the session ends at 4:30. All right. So without delaying, I would like to call upon Puan Asima to carry out the session. All right. Over to you, Puan Asima. Thank you. Puan Asima, please switch on your mic.
I was testing it and it didn't come out right. Sorry.
Okay, all right.
So I get a very good sunny afternoon, I hope, wherever you are right now. It may have been a long, tough day in school, but exactly as how Puan Hilwana was saying just a few moments ago, we're really glad that the pupils of various schools, I've been informed by Puan Hilwana, there are pupils uh, that are taking this subject, Kesusastraan Inggris or Literature 2206, from various schools in PPD Petaling Utama. That is very heartening, absolutely heartwarming to hear. A very quick shout out to all the teachers who are here with their students today. Thank you for being the superheroes that you are. All right, you are doing such a great job with your students. Thank you, thank you. To all those who are here with me absolute courage and perhaps also craziness to consider taking this subject. All right, if I may, I'm going to immediately go into what we hope to share today. I'm going into a PowerPoint presentation, hopefully one that will help everyone review what they already feel they know about English literature. Please shout out if you can't see, if I've done technically something not quite right. We're going to start with the PowerPoint. And it's a quick review, as I mentioned earlier. A completed with their respective teachers. Again, welcome. We are with Wasila Minda, PPD Petaling Utama, and we are going to share what we can. Please feel free to uh, switch on your mics and shout out if there is a question. If there is a doubt of any kind, please do not hesitate. I may not be the best in the business. I'm here very humbly to share my 2 cents worth of knowledge with all of you today, right? First and foremost, everyone is familiar with this. This certainly looks like a culmination or an overall view of what your journey has been like so far. When you were first teachers would have given you these titles. Once upon a time, they may have sounded foreign, unfamiliar, strange, but I'm sure now you are very confidently ready to sit for the SPM paper. Right? Most of you would have made a choice whether to do short stories or one of the two novels. You would have chosen one of the three drama options. And what is similar, common to all of us here, is the fact that we all have to read through, study, and analyze all 10 poems, right? That's not frightening at all to see. It is a wonderful journey of reading those literary texts, I'm sure you'll say. Yeah? But what is the exam format like? Most of you will whether to do the 6 short stories or one of the two novels, whether to do Merchant of Venice, Flowers for Algernon, or Hope Springs. But reading, analyzing is merely a small part of the battle when it comes to literature. This literature paper or Kesusastraan Inggris 2206, that is the subject code, as I'm sure you all know. What you are looking at the moment is something that everyone is absolutely familiar with. I'm going to get right into it. What makes this paper unique and what makes all of you unique is the fact that you are all preparing to write responses that contain all that you are going to write the actual day of the exam must contain all AO1, AO2, AO3, and AO4. What you are looking right now is what I have noticed some pupils employ or use. This is a method that they feel they are comfortable with. Certainly, some of you may feel this also works very well for you. This is what I call the step-by-step formula, where there is a point to make, a statement to make. The pupil or candidate then selects relevant textual evidence or AO1 that will then support and elaborate your understanding, interpretation, or inference. Familiar with the high likelihood that your assessment objective 1 and assessment objective 2 will come hand in hand. Why? Because we all start with an understanding of the text, how much you know of the text, what goes on in the text, and then how much you can read between the lines. So AO1 and AO2, I feel most pupils out there are ready to go. Next, a written response must also contain the discussion and elaboration on how language, structure, and devices have effectively been used in order to convey themes and ideas in a text. And so you know this as AO3. What were the writer's tools? All right. AO4, or assessment objective 4, is how well all of you respond to the text. I would like to touch on this a little bit further because we normally begin with AO4, or use of AO4, expressing AO4 by saying a candidate should be able to provide a personal response, one that is mature, one that is critical. And then I find some will turn around and ask, what does that even mean? Mature towards what? And respond towards who? All right. So let's go take a look at another slide that discusses assessment objective 1, which are absolutely crucial to each of your 6 responses. All right. You need all AO1, 2, 3, and 4 in your 2 responses for prose, 2 responses for drama, and your 2 responses for poetry. What is AO1? A candidate should show deep knowledge of the text, not just know basic plot, not just know a little bit of what's happened, but has an in-depth knowledge of the events, of the character development in that text, is able to support a statement that he or she makes by providing suitable textual evidence, whether the evidence is directly quoted, taken exactly as how you see it in the text, or paraphrased. That's the foundation, ladies and gentlemen, having a deep knowledge of the text. That is assessment objective 1. We move on then to what I was mentioning earlier about AO1 and AO2 always moving together hand in hand. Assessment objective 2 is a candidate's ability to read between the lines, to simply put it. He or she is able to discern underlying meaning. And that means when you are reading through the text, you can go beyond surface meaning. You are not only looking at main events of a plot, you are also able to catch the significance of those events. Not just what happened, but why did that happen and how will it affect the characters involved? Candidates should be able to understand context, meaning there are plenty of background information such as socio-political historical context that influences plot, for example. What are the significant, most important events that help you appreciate the text? Also, character development, right? Can you provide an underlying meaning? Then we move on to assessment objective 3, as mentioned earlier. A candidate should be able to discuss. And when we say discuss, we actually mean to analyze, to pick out, to point out use of language that you can detect in a text, but to study and judge. Wow, this was good and effective use of language, use of devices, and has powerfully conveyed the intended main ideas in a text. As mentioned earlier, the writer's craft. Finally, you also have, as we looked at earlier, assessment objective 4. As I asked earlier, aren't there amongst all of you here today students who might still be wondering, how do I express my reaction? What exactly am I reacting to? All right. To present a to be mature towards a text. Mature meaning looking at the text and then responding it from a mature point of view, and then providing a critical reaction to events that took place, the characters and their interactions between one another, the values and the themes that have been conveyed. Ladies and gentlemen, I know these are all familiar to you, and I only would like to remind everyone that when you are writing a full response, remember that the assessment objectives must come together very much like the circle or pie that I have put in the middle of the slide. Your response is, if I were to compare, grown and you have provided your answers to fulfill the requirements of AO 1, 2, 3, and 4. You write a response that has them from start to finish as a whole unit. Not to say, right? Not to say that it is a requirement that you must fulfill in every single content point that you make. I hope that everyone is clear about this, right? Some pupils have come to me and asked if, for example, they are looking at a text and they are responding to a given task. They are often wondering if that essay or response needs to be made up fixed number of paragraphs. And if so, do these paragraphs need to have all the AOs in every one of the paragraphs that they have written? And my answer to that question would be quality versus quantity. Quality definitely winning over quantity. It is not the number of paragraphs that you write. It is not the length of your essay that is important. What is crucial is that when you answer the given task or given question, you have already in your mind prepared an outline. And your outline would have the content points that you wish to write. So, number of 3 content points. All you need to remember is that from the beginning until the end of your response or essay, as long as your assessment objectives or AOs have been expressed well and can be seen throughout, then that means very clearly you are on the right track and you are doing a good job. All right? Please give me a shout out, switch on your mics, and ask if you have any questions regarding the assessment objectives. All right? Most pupils will tell me, okay, teacher, I think what you said made sense. I'm supposed to be mature, critical, looking at. And this is why we've come to this. When you are responding to a given task, you will need to express your thoughts and feelings because those make up your AO4. Remember? Your AO4 would be your critical reaction to events and characters, to values and themes, to the text itself. Most pupils find it helpful, I feel, if they start with a yes or a no, a like or a dislike, because that's the first question you will probably ask yourself. So, how do I feel about this? Do I like this character? Do I not like this character? Right? What are some positive thoughts and feelings? We can say, I think what was said was absolutely right, was absolutely true. In my opinion, that was the best decision made. I completely agree with what was said, what was mentioned, and the actions taken. Upon reading this chapter, I find this was a crucial or positive moment for the protagonist. I would think the same way too if a similar experience happened to me. I'm sure you're getting the gist of this. What you are looking at are different expressions that will, I hope, come in. I am responding. How do I say I am reacting to the text? So, how do I feel about a certain character? Do I like her? Do I like him? Do I agree with what he said? So, if you look towards your left, you've got, as I mentioned earlier, expressing positive thoughts and feelings. I was pleased. I was worried. It was funny to see. It was amusing to read about. Those are all handy expressions because, before I forget, I'd like to remind everyone, as I sometimes also remind my own pupils, it is certainly not enough to just say, oh, I like the character. He's a good guy. Or certainly insufficient. Your personal reaction needs to have a critical element to it, meaning you've given it really deep thought. I was pleased to see how the conversation showed Dara's maturity. If we are referring to the novel, The Clay Marble, I became worried for Lani after her interrogation at the submarine by the old chief rooster if we were referring to the Birds of Paradise short story, right? And if you look at the last collection of emotions there, to feel that something is exciting or delightful or unforgettable, right? You definitely will Some pupils have asked, do I just say what I like, what I don't like? And I would have to say, you also need to consider how the overall text has been influenced by the events, don't you? When certain events take place, for example, upon learning in the end of the novel, Dara loses her best friend and mentor, Jantu. You certainly would be on a roller coaster of emotions. The grief, the sadness, the turbulent emotions you are going through, experiencing. That brings us to the negative thoughts and feelings. It was such a shock. My mind, what just happened as I read through the chapter. Those are, as you can see on the right side of your slide, those are expressions that I hope will help you as you are dealing with reacting to the main events, reacting to certain actions by certain characters, reacting to words used, and the underlying emotion conveyed. If it is something that made you feel displeased, you would probably say, I cannot help but disagree with what the antagonist mentioned. If you feel it was not the right thing to do, you would certainly write a sentence along the lines of, I really do not think I did. You might also say, the situation could have been better if, raising the possibility and showing maturity of thought. What if things happened differently? How would I have reacted? Would I have fared worse, better? When I was reading through the chapter and it got to the confrontation between General Kung Silo, Chennai, and Dara as it takes place in the novel, The Clay Marble, would I have been able to gather my internal strength and speak up for what I thought was something I deserved? Would I have just remained there, frozen, motionless, paralyzed with fear? Towards the bottom, as such as hardly a surprise, not shocking at all. I felt afraid. I was reluctant to turn the page and continue reading. And then, when you put yourself in the shoes of the characters, certainly you can use expressions like, if it had happened to me, if anything like that were to happen to me, I would have felt hurt, embarrassed, upset, humiliated. I would have dug a big hole and planted myself in the ground, hiding myself from the world. All these expressions help you to make sure whoever reads your essays, very impressive. These candidates, they know going on. They can analyze the use of language, and they have critically responded to the text as well. So there, ladies and gentlemen, we have quickly taken a look at our assessment objectives 1, 2, 3, and 4. Moving on, let's take a look at the different sections of the paper or exam paper. Section A is obviously prose. There are some of you here who are studying the 6 short stories. Many perhaps are doing the clay marble, and there might be some out there who are doing the Lost King. When you are looking at the questions for prose, what do you think we will come across? Between prose and drama, where you are looking at a 15-mark A question and a 20-mark B question, the similarities are as you can see in the slide. An A task or question is extract based. It comes from a passage taken from the text. It is followed by a question, and you will have to answer as best as you can for 15 marks. The main content points of a response. What are we looking for when we hope our students do their best? Is to discuss the main content points from the extract or passage, not events that have taken place before, not events that have not yet happened. Make, of course, references can be made to events that have taken place as you are providing background information regarding a place, regarding a person, regarding an event. But that should not be the majority or the bigger portion of your answer. So if you are looking at the example questions, the sample questions that I have there, you will find that the A questions or tasks could focus on plot, could focus on character analysis and character development, could focus on language in use. If you're looking at a short story like Thieving Daughter or a question, there could be an extract coming from the short story where there is a conversation between Beverly and the Filipino maid. She is highly suspicious of the Filipino maid's very vague and mysterious answers. She is rather sure that that's where my camera or video camera has disappeared too. The maid has taken it. So you might already see in this extract that Beverly is behaving and sounding aggressive, hostile, bossy, and rude. Those might be your content points. Looking at the question there, what are your thoughts and feelings about Beverly at this moment in the story? A, your thoughts and feelings. What do I think about Beverly? How do I feel about Beverly? Not from my reading of the overall text, but in this specific scene. Let's go back to what we were looking at earlier. Would you say I was afraid for the maid to see how hostile her employer was towards her. Would you say it was such a shock to read that Beverly considered surrendering the Filipino maid to the police authorities and deporting her back to the Philippines over the crime that she had committed, right? Let's take a look at Thieving Daughter. And in Thieving Daughter, and Aisha analyze the relationship between Aisha and her mother in this scene. Again, not your understanding of what has happened between mother and daughter from your overall reading of the text, but what has happened mostly in the given passage. Some of you will be considering, I'm sure, but certain events have taken place, and it is these events that have made Katno what she is. True, I could not agree more. Katno has had tremendous challenges throughout her life, and she certainly is at that moment in her life when she feels that she has been handed a bad deal in life. Her destiny has been but that is not what is being discussed in the scene. The scene requires you to look at Katno and Aisha. How do they speak to each other? What do they think of each other? What is the relationship that these two have? If you're looking at The Lost King, you might have a question that runs along the lines of how has a language been used to make this a suspenseful moment in the novel The Lost King? So, for 15 marks, as I have mentioned earlier, it is not how many paragraphs you have written. It is not how long your answer should be. What I would suggest candidates always remember is try to do your best main content points. We will talk about this further when we look at time management. Yeah? When you have 6 responses that require a thorough discussion, and these 6 essays are to be completed within 2.5 hours, it is obviously clear for everyone to see, I hope, that it's not about length and not about how long your essay is. If you have written a 1-page essay and it is filled with points, but none of these points have been fully addressed, it would show a lack in discussion, and it would hurt you when overall marks are considered. So we are looking at this, as I mentioned earlier, assessment objectives 1, 2, 3, and 4. Moving on, what is a B task like? All right. A B task is going to be based, all right, on your overall reading and understanding of the text. How much do I know of this text where it comes to main ideas, themes, the values and life observations that the author or playwright has conveyed? As we were saying earlier, Lani in The Birds of Paradise is an adorable hen who lays 1 egg a day. She decides later that she would like to consider flying. She did not mean it as an action that would provoke and harm her place in society, but rather chief rooster. But that is exactly what happened. So you may have a question that runs along the lines of, sometimes being ourselves can be a great challenge. It was so difficult for Lani just to be herself. So, what would you do to answer this task for 20 marks? As I mentioned earlier, you would be comfortable with 3 or 4 main content points. How is it a challenge to be ourselves? When is it a challenge to be ourselves? What can we do when being ourselves is a challenge? And you refer to the text and what you remember of this short story. Looking at Clay Marble, the novel, there are a variety of questions that you could face. All these questions would touch on the main ideas or themes found in the novel. The clay marble, you find growth, such maturity coming from Dara, Jantu, eventually Sarun. They experience such hardship and challenges, and they are not so far in age to all of you. They are youngsters, but they are experiencing a life that is so unlike what all of you are going through right now. So they might ask you about the effects of war, as war is prominently discussed in the novel. They might discuss, in the form of a question, the idea of family and friendship. They could ask you about family, love, and support. They could even ask you about character traits that we see blossoming in our protagonist, young Dara. So you might have a question, such as the one that you can see there. How has friendship been shown in this novel? Now, if you were to have a question like this, some of you are probably already thinking, what do I do? Oh no. Should I talk about all the characters in the novel? Should I mention Sarun and Nia and Dara and Jantu and Chene, even the patient in the hospital, Joey? For 20 marks, does that make sense to write about all the characters you remember? Ladies and gentlemen, what would certainly be more effective is if you concentrate on a character. Take another look at the task that you have been given. How has friendship been shown? Are you going to focus on only Dara? That's a good idea. Go ahead. Dara and the mentor, best friend, sister relationship with Jantu. Dara and her cooperation with Nia. Dara and the unexpected friendship that grows between Dara and Chene. You could look at the question that way, and you would be on the right track because you would see the events in the novel, how friendship has taken place in Dara's life through her. What about the question that you have at the bottom? What are Jantu's ideas about war? What does Jantu feel about war? What does Jantu think about war? Does Jantu agree about war happening in her home country? Does Jantu like war taking place in her homeland? That would be how you look at the question. How has Jantu responded to everything that has happened to her in this novel? You start with how she lost her parents. You move on to the role that she now has with her baby brother, not just as a sister, but as a mother caregiver role. Jantu's family. You look at how Jantu observes throughout the chapters of the novel everyone's lives affected by war. What does she think? All right, let's move on to a sample question and how maybe we would answer them. Let's take a look at Chua Ko Yi's short story, Sambal Without Anchovies. If we were given this extract that takes place towards the later part of the text, with Nora observing her father in law with avid curiosity, thinking of the Cold War happening between Hanif and Pak. In this scene, what does Nora realize about Hanif and Pak Samad? So, as most of your teachers have probably often reminded you with, first thing you do when you get a question is you're going to take a look at the keywords and unpack the question. What does the question want? So we're going to look at Hanif and Pak Samad, but we're going to look at Nora's point of view. What has she seen with both men? What does she realize about her husband and her father-in-law? So what I have listed for you to see are some pieces of TE or textual evidence, as I call them, as you are reading through the given extract. What do we know? We know that Pak Samad can be kind and accommodating. He is an individual who is willing to compromise with others. We know that Hanif is upset with his father, and it seems that Pak Samad is reluctant to compromise with Hanif. Would you mention everything else that has happened before this extract? You could, because you want to provide some background information, yes, but you would not completely write about the whole text. Do not forget, your question is based on should mostly come from this given passage. I have colored the sentences at the bottom of your right hand side so that you can see how we may, after reading the extract and putting together some answers, how we might write them out. Let's read them together. As Nora quite intuitively right? She's got female intuition. As you all know, women can be very sharp about putting pieces of a puzzle together. And Nora's quite sure, based on what she has seen, all right, observing Pak Samad cutting the banana leaves with happiness and joy. We see how this elderly man misses his late wife dearly. Face glows. I'm sure you noticed that there are four colors and they represent the four AOs. The expressions curve up and wrinkled face glows. That would be AO3, or effective use of language. To say that his mouth curved up in a smile like a U shape, and how his face was filled with joy as though it was glowing with happiness. It demonstrates how Nora came to the realization that this was a man who actually was missing his late wife. That would be your AO2. At surface meaning, some students hang the banana leaves and cut them according to what he remembers doing with his wife. That's true. That's not wrong at all. But you know what the significance of memories is to all of us, right? The memories of a shared past that they no longer share means that Pak Samad is fighting that loneliness, remembering what he used to have but doesn't anymore. It's certainly enough to make you feel very sad for Pak Samad. That might be realization one. What might be realization two? Nora realizes how both men are unwilling to budge from their respective opinions on the matter of the nasi lemak stall. You can mention it briefly as long as I mentioned earlier, as it does not take the most or biggest portion of your response. The author, Chua Ko-yi, reinforces how both of them go around spewing macho bullshit, are unable to let go of their stupid pride, but in reality do care for each other. So we've got two strong points. And I would say to students out there, if you have two good points that you are very confident about, go ahead. You are on the right track. Write about these 2 points. I would rather have pupils write out an essay that discusses 2 points in depth rather than them talking continuously until point 17, but none of those statements have been discussed in depth. Perhaps some of you are thinking now, what does it mean in depth? All right, let's take a look at the Peel formula, which is what I try to get my students to use when they write for the exam. The Peel formula refers to point, evidence, elaboration, and link. And this is a formula that you can actually use all across your 6 short stories, all right, or your novel, your drama, or your 10 poems. The P stands for point. The E stands for evidence or textual evidence taken from the passage or extract. The elaboration would be some further discussion to the the link to the question or task that you have been given. What was the task that we were given? We were asked to consider the realizations that Nora made regarding Hanif and Pak Samad. So a candidate might say, Nora realizes how lonely Pak Samad must be. Nora realizes both father and son are deeply concerned about each other despite their tough behavior. So once you are comfortable using the Peel formula, you will realize that you would not any longer worry about how long should I write? What should I write? Is this enough? Should I write more? As long as you keep to a steady template, meaning you have your assessment objectives A01, 2, 3, and 4 in your response, you are going to do well. All right? It is not to say, some of you might be thinking, it is not to say, oh no, that cannot be. How can I write only about these 2 points? Would that be enough for 15 marks? Don't forget, I have only provided a simple outline here, and it looks rather simple, as I'm sure you are looking at it right now, if you only see the peel as it is. But consider the fact that when you are reading through the text, there's so much that you are going to circle, underline, highlight, that you will realize when you stick to, all right, continue using the P solidly fulfill the requirements of the task. Whether you are doing a short story or a novel, the Peel formula is the same. On the other hand, one might also use a different approach. I don't know if there are many of you out there who are comfortable with this. All right, you get the question. How does the question go? Analyze Jantu's ideas about war in the novel. And you quickly jot down everything you can remember about Jantu and what she thinks about war. It's not possible to write everything there. It's not possible to cram everything into your response, despite how you want very much to. In purple, in blue, are examples of what I might consider as the most important content points. I might say, Jantu feels that war has made her displaced. She is now homeless. She is a refugee with nowhere to go to. On an emotional level, she has lost both parents. And if you remember your novel, she does talk about how a family is incomplete with no members added on to the family. I might write about that. I might write about how she herself experiences the traumatic bombing that happens, I believe, in chapter 7, where she and Dara and baby are separated from their family members. How she herself sees the suffering of the children in the hospital ward. Jantu believes war or no war, life must go on. War or no war, we must persevere and remain strong. If that's how I look at it, despite all the notes that I have very quickly scribbled, I would focus on those three main points. And then you work on your assessment objectives. Make sure your response has the AO1, 2, 3, and 4. With 2, with 3, very well discussed, thoroughly discussed content points. Ladies and gentlemen, you are already on the right track. Please do not be flustered and look at the number there, 20, right? And feel that you are forced to write and it is not the length, but it is the quality of your response, right? So, looking at drama, as I mentioned earlier, the same formula applies. Whether you are answering based on Flowers for Algernon or Merchant of Venice or Hope Springs, we know that the questions that may appear are A and B questions. A questions are 15 marks and based on the extract. B questions are based on a theme or a main idea found in the drama. For Flowers of Algernon, there could be a question regarding reality versus expectations. For Hope Springs, there could be a question on the significance of characterization and the role that the ringleader there could be a question on loyalty. How was loyalty conveyed in this drama? So you would probably look at the relationships that occur from the beginning until the end of this play. Are you going to touch on friendship between Antonio and Bassanio? Are you going to look at Shylock's daughter and the great lengths that she went to in order to be with her lover? So much so that she forsook everything. She left behind everything about her life, but took with her her father's jewels and ducats. All right? I have briefly meaning simply put together these sample questions so that you can sort of contrast and see that across the board, whether it is Flowers, be based on a passage or extract. The questions for the B 20 mark question will be based on a main idea, a theme, a life observation found in the text. I hope that everyone is all right. So far, we've looked at prose and drama. And before the thunderstorm hits us, let's very quickly take a look at poetry. These are the 10 poems that I'm sure everyone has studied and analyzed, very familiar with. A constant reminder that I give my own pupils, one that I will give everyone here as well, is even if you have found out, for example, all right, if you have found out that there are 4 poems that appeared in the exam paper, too quick to clap your hands. Do not be too quick to quickly delete or write off those 4 poems. Why do I say so? Because each of the 10 poems can always appear as an A or a B question. If Daffodils has appeared as an A, it could always come out again and make an appearance as a B question. Likewise for all the other 9 poems. So my pupils, don't quite like it when I tell them, don't forget, there are 20 possibilities, because they feel that the number is so intimidating. But what I normally will just tell them is, you know your literary devices. You have gone through personification and simile, whether it is metaphor and anaphora, whether it is biblical allusions or oxymoron, juxtaposition, paradox, hyperbole. You know your stuff. You are prepared. The poems are going to be provided for you as a guidance during the exam paper. So when you open up the exam paper, you will see two sets of questions. You will see, for example, daffodils appearing together with tiger. You will also see to autumn appearing with if. So you have to quickly decide, am I leaning towards Wordsworth and Blake, or do I prefer John Keats? Both A questions will ask about effective use of language. In Daffodils, the question is, how does Wordsworth use language to convey nature's ability to offer us comfort? And in the question on the other side, by John Keats, to autumn, how does Keats use language to show the abundance of the autumn season? So we know very well that an A question is going to feel or sound a little bit more technical. It's going to look at how much we know regarding use of language. Some of you are thinking, oh no, I don't know a lot. I've got to revise and revise all my literary devices, all my use of language, my diction and everything else, my choice of words, my tone and mood. No, as comfort versus the abundance of the autumn season. If you know your poems, all you need to work on are three, maybe four, all right, devices or use of language that answers that given task. What are the devices that I could use to discuss nature's ability to offer us comfort? Do I have seven? I could probably list out eight, but I don't need all eight, ladies and gentlemen. I need all of you to work on very comfortably, very thoroughly, three or four. All right? Let's take a look at the B questions. Which do we like better? Do we like the discussion on the tiger as a creature of admirable beauty, or life of honor containing good values? You will make your choice. If you do daffodils and tiger, as discussed, look at the devices, look at the main points and the themes discussed in the poem. Likewise, if you prefer Keats or Kipling. Let's take a look at three possible answers. Looking at nature's ability to offer us comfort and joy. I might say I can look at personification. Throughout the poem, there there are plenty of examples using visual imagery where you can visualize the daffodil dancing to the delight of the persona. Moving on, I might discuss simile at the beginning of the poem, where he likens himself to a cloud and one who is feeling loneliness and sadness. Later on, that mood changes and he is feeling jubilant, overjoyed, because he has already been cheered up and inspired by these treasures of nature. Some of you might say, yes, cannot forget hyperbole or hyperbole, as I sometimes mistakenly pronounce. I'm sorry. When you have the exaggerated comparison of these daffodils to stars in the sky, to the staggering, unbelievable number of 10,000, it means that William Blake would like us to understand the persona felt as though these daffodils were as far as the eyes can see, impressive in sheer large numbers. So I might have a candidate who thoroughly discusses for 15 marks, beginning with an introduction, continuing with content point 1, content point 2, content point 3. What would be the link between these three? All these devices used convey one very important idea. The encounter was something considered precious and unforgettable, as the persona himself says in the whenever I have a challenge that feels like an uphill battle, all it takes is I remember how I felt when I chanced upon those daffodils, how that unexpected, happy encounter with the daffodils changed my life forever. So, throughout your response, you would mention there the comfort and joy, the precious and unforgettable moment, bringing comfort and joy, because the daffodils are representative of nature. As most of you already would have studied, this is an iconic example of a romantic poem. Let's take a look at William Blake, also for 15 marks, but as a B question. The tiger is a creature. On the left, I might agree. On the right, I might disagree. All right? Candidates can agree or disagree, provided all content points or statement made are supported using textual evidence. One candidate might say the tiger is truly a creature of admirable beauty because it has beautiful features and its power and strength is alluring. Another candidate, on the other hand, might have already read through, analyzed, studied the poem, and come to a different opinion. He or she might disagree and say the tiger's features aren't beautiful or admirable. They are frightening. They are scary. Remind us that the tiger could be a creature of evil. The candidate then might continue by saying, the tiger isn't a creature of admirable beauty. It seems deadly, like any encounter with the tiger could prove to be fatal. How could you withstand and survive an encounter with the tiger? All right. So for poetry, one might feel slightly flustered. When looking at the question, one might say, oh no, I've only got 3 content points discussing William Wordsworth and daffodils. Likewise, with the tiger, a candidate might say, I need to talk about the rhetorical questions asked. I need to mention the personification. I need to mention fire. No, ladies and gentlemen, do not fret. Do not panic. As I mentioned, quality versus quantity. What's overridingly clear would be your answer should be clear, thorough, in-depth discussion. It doesn't need to be these touch and go answers. You are not in a hurry to jam pack everything in there. What we would like to see our pupils of PPT Petaling Utama do is look at the task, consider 3 or 4 devices that I am most comfortable with. Can I make a statement? Can I support the statement? And off you go. Right? Off you go. With 3 or 4 devices, you are on the right track. Drama, short stories, novels, and poems. I come to the last part of our session today. Earlier on, I did mention whenever I spoke about length, number of paragraphs, how long an essay might be. All right. And I mentioned, let's get back to this later on. And now here we are, 150 minutes to complete 6 responses, beginning with section A, prose, continuing with section B, drama, and then ending with section C, poetry. I must also say that this is merely a guideline. What definitely works is some pupils will say, we are mostly worried about poetry. We may answer poetry first. Some pupils might say, teacher, I'm so afraid I will forget everything on the morning of the exam. So I'm going to work on Merchant of Venice first. That is, in actual fact, a common question that I have come across. Can I answer a section that is not the first appearing in the question paper first? Is it all right if I answer Flowers for Algernon first? It is absolutely all right. But please, please be very careful at the beginning or at the top of your response or answer. Always indicate whether it is novel, whether it is drama, whether it is short story, trials, whether it is for your actual SPM paper. Please do not forget to write at the top of the page, just in case you begin with drama first. Then it would be very easy to get confused if you don't follow the flow you think. All right? Start with drama, fine. Just write at the top of the page. Begin with poetry first, go ahead, but indicate at the top of the page. As I mentioned earlier, 55, 55, and 40 is merely a guideline. I suggest 110 followed by 40 before you squeeze in the last maybe 3 to 5 minutes to run through your overall answer before the invigilator all right. Finally, I'd like to end by saying a huge thank you to everyone for your kind attention. I heard no sound, so I really hope that everything was absorbed well. You understood the message I was trying to convey. And definitely, I would like to wish all the candidates all the best for the SPM examination. All right. I have covered all three genres of the exam paper. So we are open to any doubt, any question that anyone might have. No question is too silly. Please do not hesitate. Whether it is a student, whether it is a teacher. Oh, everyone's really happy with the discussion that we had. It doesn't feel like a discussion because it seems like I was the only one who spoke.
Yeah, yeah, me too. I'm actually waiting for any of the candidates or the people's asking questions, yeah, regarding whatever Puan Asima has conveyed just now. Puan Asima has actually explained very clearly, yeah, how you should answer the question, how you should explain each and every point that you want to support. All right, and also the scores or the marks, yeah, for each question, the breakups and everything. So for the beginning, yeah, for the beginning, uh, it is actually something that you can use as a guide for you uh, to score or to respond to the questions better. All right. I think there is one question. All right. From Siti Nur Azrina, she said, thank you for the insight, Cikgu, especially the method of elaboration. Right. Okay. So, what is important regarding English literature is how you elaborate. Yeah? Make sure you do not retell the story. Okay. You have to support your the views or the points that you are making with the evidence that you have in the text. All right. Any other things that you want to say here before I share the attendance link? All right. Okay. Anything? Puan Sri Sharmila Banu from SMJK Catholic would like to say something? Are you in? Because the Catholic students, they told me they couldn't make it because they have something on. But I'm going to see them later, maybe next week. All right. So this is actually PPD Petaling Utama's effort to help those students, especially those who are taking on your own. Yeah, you do not have a teacher in your school to teach you the English literature because you're taking on your own. The school does not offer the subject. All right. So this is one way of helping you. All right. You can also search in YouTube for other resources. Yeah, Puan Asimah also is in Read TV. All right, so you can see her, and I hope you also know what text you are choosing or using. All right, okay, this is very important. Okay, all right. So if there is nothing else, we will end this here. I will post the attendance now. Okay, hold on. Okay. All right. I have posted the attendance link in the chat box. You can respond to the attendance. All right. And before we end, I would like to thank Puan Asima for her time today and for the very clear explanation. All right. Even when I listen to whatever she is saying, she has said, yeah, I felt excited, very interesting. Yeah. Just bits and pieces, but it's very interesting. All right. And I hope this session is helpful to everyone. Okay. So it's already nearing 4:30. All right. As promised, we will end this session now. All right. Thank you very much, Puan Asima, and thank you very much to all the pupils who have joined this session. All right. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.